Picture this. Late at night, the kind of night where the stars are swallowed by an endless black canvas. I was driving into Las Vegas with my boyfriend Mark, the hum of the tires on the asphalt the only sound for miles. We'd been anticipating this trip for weeks. The city lights began to bleed over the desert horizon, a shimmering mirage promising excitement and escape. It was electric and unnatural, a manufactured paradise rising from the dust. It was supposed to be my birthday celebration, a weekend of indulgence and carefree fun. But as we got closer, I felt a knot of anxiety I couldn't shake, a prickle of unease that settled deep in my stomach. It was a feeling I couldn't quite explain, a sense of foreboding that seemed to grow with each passing mile. Mark was hyped for the casinos, already planning his strategy for hitting the jackpot. He was practically vibrating with anticipation. But I stared out the window, lost in my own thoughts, the neon glow reflecting in my eyes. I was watching Joshua trees whip by like skeletal hands reaching out from the darkness, their silhouettes stark against the inky sky. They seemed to be warning me, their silent gestures filled with a sense of dread. The closer we got to the city, the more the neon felt like a warning, not a welcome, a siren song luring me towards something I wasn't sure I wanted to face. The strip exploded into view, a sensory overload of light and sound, fountains dancing in choreographed displays, a fake Eiffel Tower piercing the sky, crowds everywhere, a sea of faces all chasing the same fleeting dream. But even amidst the spectacle, between the hotels, the alleys were deep, dark voids, swallowing the light and promising secrets best left undisturbed. The city wore a happy mask, a carefully constructed facade of joy and indulgence, but something older and darker lurked beneath, a hidden undercurrent of desperation and forgotten dreams. Finally, we pulled up to our hotel, a rundown place Mark, with a strained attempt at optimism, called Vintage. It was anything but. The sign flickered erratically, a broken promise of hospitality. OASSMOTL. The missing letters felt symbolic, as if something essential was missing from this place. The building slouched under the weight of years, paint peeling like sunburnt skin, the air thick with the ghosts of dust and stale cigarettes. This was our glamorous Vegas getaway, a far cry from the luxurious escape I had envisioned. I tried to shake off the dread that was settling in my bones, to convince myself that it was just pre-birthday jitters. But it only tightened its grip, a cold hand squeezing my heart. Mark, ever the optimist, cranked up the music, completely oblivious to my growing unease. I stared at the hotel, its dilapidated facade a stark contrast to the glittering promise of the strip. I was feeling like we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross, venturing into a place where the shadows held more power than the light. The night was just beginning, stretching out before us like an endless unknown road. And I already wanted to go home, to turn the car around and leave the glittering facade of Las Vegas far behind. Something told me this trip would be unforgettable, etched in my memory forever. But I had a sinking feeling it would be for all the wrong reasons, a dark chapter in my life I would never be able to fully close. The lobby was a time capsule, a relic of a bygone era where glamour met neglect. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through grimy windows, illuminating faded velvet furniture and tarnished brass fixtures. It felt like stepping into a forgotten movie set, a place where the past refused to stay buried. 70s carpet, a kaleidoscope of browns and oranges stretched out before us, worn thin by countless footsteps and stained with the ghosts of spilled drinks and forgotten memories. Stale smoke, clinging to the air like a persistent phantom, mingled with a metallic tang that tickled my nostrils. It was an unsettling combination, a sensory assault that hinted at something amiss. The air itself felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken stories and lingering secrets. An ancient clerk, his face a roadmap of wrinkles and his eyes clouded with untold years, slid us a brass key across the counter, never speaking a word. The key felt heavy and cold in my hand, a tangible symbol of the unease that was settling over me. Just watching, his gaze unwavering as if he could see right through us, into the depths of our souls. It was a disconcerting feeling, like being scrutinized by a silent judge. Mark checked in, unfazed by the clerk's unsettling demeanor or the general atmosphere of decay. He scribbled his name in the register with a casual confidence that I envied, but I felt the portraits on the walls watching us too, their painted eyes seeming to follow our every move. The subjects were an odd assortment of stern-faced men and women, their expressions unreadable, their presence unnerving. The silence was suffocating, a thick, heavy blanket that muffled every sound and amplified the feeling of isolation. It pressed in on us, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, broken only by Mark's pen scratching against the paper as he filled out the registration form, a sound that seemed deafening in the oppressive quiet. I thought I saw a woman in a painting move, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a subtle shift in her painted expression, her eyes following me, or so it seemed, sending a shiver down my spine. It was probably just my imagination, fueled by the unsettling atmosphere, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Shadows played tricks in the corners of the room, stretching and contorting into grotesque shapes. But the feeling of being watched was real, a palpable presence that prickled my skin and raised the hairs on the back of my neck. The old man pointed us to room 313, his bony finger trembling slightly as he gestured towards the hallway. Down a dim, endless hallway that seemed to stretch on forever, receding into the darkness. The air grew colder as we ventured further, the silence more profound. "Elevator's temperamental," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Best take the stairs." As we left, he stood motionless behind the desk, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the hotel, a fixture in the gloom, a permanent resident of this forgotten place. The hallway was darker than the lobby, the shadows deeper and more menacing, the carpet dizzying, its swirling pattern creating a disorienting effect that made it hard to focus. I grabbed Mark's arm, my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. This wasn't charming or quirky, it was just creepy, unsettling, and deeply wrong. Every step felt like we were trespassing somewhere we didn't belong, intruding on a world that wanted to be left alone. The hotel clung to its secrets like a miser hoarding gold, unwilling to share its hidden history. And I was starting to wish, with a growing sense of dread, that we'd never checked in, that we'd kept driving and found somewhere, anywhere else to spend the night. Mark tried to crack a joke, to lighten the mood, but the tension was too thick, too palpable to be dispelled by a simple jest. I just wanted to get to our room, to shut the door, and lock the world out, hoping to find some semblance of safety and peace within those four walls. The elevator was ancient, groaning and flickering as it crawled to the third floor. The hallway was colder, mustier, and darker than the lobby. Room 313 waited at the end, its door scratched and worn. Inside, 2 beds, dusty curtains, a relic TV, everything frozen in time. I dropped my bag, exhaled, and then heard it. A faint whisper from the corner. I strained to listen. "Did you hear that?" I asked Mark. He was in the bathroom, oblivious. The room was silent again, but I knew what I'd heard. I told myself it was just pipes or the AC, but it was the first crack in my nerves. The unease was turning into real fear. I tried to ignore it, but the room felt alive with secrets. Something in that hotel wanted to be heard. I tried to shake off the whisper, that unsettling feeling that had crept into my mind like a chilling draft. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just the old building playing tricks on my senses, a figment of an overactive imagination. But the unease lingered, a knot tightening in my stomach. We decided to head out for some food, hoping that a change of scenery and a good meal would dispel the growing sense of dread. I made sure to lock the door behind us, double-checking the deadbolt, a futile attempt to secure ourselves against an unseen threat. The hallway was eerily empty, stretching out before us like a dark, silent maw. But despite the absence of any visible presence, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming, a suffocating weight pressing down on me. It was as if unseen eyes were boring into my back. Shadows stretched and shrank under the flickering bulb, dancing like malevolent spirits in the dim light. The unreliable illumination only amplified the unsettling atmosphere. I stopped abruptly, my heart pounding in my chest. I started scanning the corridor, nothing but closed doors, each one a potential hiding place, a silent sentinel guarding unknown secrets, and that awful carpet, its garish pattern a dizzying vortex that seemed to suck the light out of the room. Mark, seemingly unfazed by the oppressive atmosphere, pressed the elevator button with a casual air. "It feels like someone's watching us," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the hum of the building. He brushed it off with a dismissive shrug, attributing my anxiety to nerves. But I couldn't let it go. The feeling was too strong, too visceral to ignore. As the elevator doors creaked open with a groan, I couldn't resist the urge to glance back one last time. And that's when I saw him. A tall, thin man, almost skeletal in appearance, was clad in an old, ill-fitting suit that seemed to belong to another era. His face was lost in shadow, obscured by the dim light and the brim of a hat, making it impossible to discern any features. He was standing silently outside our room, a motionless sentinel guarding some unknown purpose. I gasped, a strangled sound escaping my lips, and grabbed Mark's arm in a desperate attempt to ground myself in reality. But when we both looked again, straining our eyes in the dim light, he was gone, vanished into thin air as if he were nothing more than a phantom. "There's no one there," Mark said gently, his voice laced with a mixture of concern and reassurance. But I knew what I saw. I was absolutely certain of it. The man in the shadows was real, not a figment of my imagination, not a trick of the light. He was watching us, observing our every move, his presence a constant, unnerving weight. And I had a chilling premonition that he wasn't done with us yet, that this was just the beginning of something far more sinister. We rode the elevator in silence, the air thick with unspoken fear and apprehension. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had seen, desperately searching for a logical explanation. The hotel felt alive, breathing with a dark energy, its history seeping through the walls and into our very bones. It felt like we had walked into a trap, that we were being hunted, stalked by something unseen and malevolent. I couldn't shake the certainty that we weren't alone, that something else was sharing this space with us, something dark and dangerous. Outside, Vegas was chaos. Lights, noise, crowds. But the hotel's silence clung to me. At a diner, I tried to explain the fear to Mark, but he didn't get it. He blamed nerves and shadows. We walked back, taking side streets to clear my head. The lights faded, the crowds vanished, and isolation set in. The feeling of being followed grew stronger. Our shadows stretched behind us, distorted by sickly streetlights. Then Mark's shadow froze 10 feet back, even as he walked beside me. I stopped, heart pounding. His shadow snapped back to him. He didn't see it. Then my own shadow darted into an alley, moving on its own. The darkness was alive, playing with us. I tried to laugh it off, but the fear was real. We hurried back, desperate for the false safety of our room. The city's chaos couldn't drown out the hotel's grip. Something was following us, and it wasn't just in our heads. Back at the Oasis, the lobby was empty, the old man gone. The portraits sneered as we passed. We took the elevator, anything to avoid the dark stairs. It groaned, then shuddered to a stop between floors. We were trapped. Mark pressed buttons, but nothing worked. Then, a scraping sound outside the doors. Something dragging along the floor. Suddenly, the elevator dropped, not up, but down. The floor indicator flickered. B for basement. The doors opened to pitch black, freezing air and the stench of decay. We hadn't pressed for the basement. The elevator had brought us here on its own, or something had. We stood frozen, staring into the void. The hotel was showing us its true face, and it wanted us to see. The blackness beyond the elevator was suffocating. Mark jabbed the door close button finally. The doors slid shut. The elevator shot up to the third floor, as if nothing had happened. We ran to our room, hands shaking, bolting the door behind us. We didn't turn on the lights, just listened to the silence. Then, the old TV flickered on by itself, spewing static. From the hiss, voices emerged, dozens, overlapping, desperate. Arguments, laughter, sobbing, pleas. One voice, clearer than the rest, a woman whispering, "Help me, help me." The TV wasn't plugged in. We checked the cord lay on the floor. The voices grew louder, more urgent. We stared, paralyzed, as the room filled with ghostly noise. The hotel's secrets were speaking, and they wanted us to listen. We needed to get out. The unplugged TV was the last straw. We started packing, hands trembling, desperate to leave. The voices from the TV grew frantic. Then I saw movement at the window. A gap in the curtains, something outside. We were on the third floor. Nothing should be out there. "Mark, there's someone at the window," I whispered. He joined me, both of us staring at the sliver of night. For a moment, nothing. Then a face appeared. Pale, gaunt, huge dark eyes pressed against the glass. Not the man from the hallway. Something else. It stared, unblinking, sucking the light from the room. We couldn't scream, couldn't move. The horror pinned us in place. 3 stories up, and it was right there, watching. The city's neon glow couldn't reach us. We were trapped in the hotel's nightmare. The face watched, silent and patient. We had to run. That face broke us. We abandoned everything, bags, gifts, all of it, and ran. Down the stairs, through the empty lobby, out into the night. We didn't stop until the Oasis was a distant glow. No keys, no wallets, no phones, just terror. A casino security guard called the police. They drove us back at sunrise. The hotel looked harmless in daylight. An officer retrieved our things from room 313. The TV was off, unplugged. The window locked from inside. No sign of anything wrong. "Old buildings make strange noises," the officer said. We nodded, took our things, and left Vegas in silence. We never spoke of it again, but I can't forget. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the static and whispers. I wonder what was in that hotel, and what it wanted with us. Some questions are better left unanswered.